Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 4 of my Australian Working Holiday series. Today we're talking about where you can actually stay while in Australia. There are 3 options: hostels, apartments, and camping. We'll get into that in a sec. If you are liking these videos, guys, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate it, and it's a big help to me. And if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me either in the comments section or on either of my social medias. All right, thank you, appreciate that, guys. Okay, so as I said, there are 3 options in Australia for staying and working and traveling while you're in Australia. Each have their own benefits, drawbacks, and everything like that, positive and negatives. And we're going to go through each of them, including the prices, availability, flexibility, the quality of living, everything like that. Okay, so the first and foremost is hostels. Now, when you first get to Australia, without a doubt, I think this is the best option. It's the cheapest, and it is the best way to meet people. That's why we travel, to meet like-minded people like ourselves, and open-minded, adventurous, and energetic people, and this is where you'll meet them. Obviously, not everyone is great in a hostel, but the best friends I've made, all the friends I've made actually traveling, I've either met in a hostel or through friends from the hostel. It's just where you meet people, and then you meet them. Obviously, you can meet people at work, but these will be the traveling people that you'll keep with for years. So when you first get to Australia, I recommend a hostel. And if you're traveling, it's still probably the best option. You can have as little as 1-day reservations. They are quite cheap, relatively. You can find in Australia anywhere from $20 to $35 a night is the average range, right in there. So it's not too bad. Most of them you can find for probably about $26, $28. And they're really not that bad. For those of you that haven't stayed in a hostel, it's basically just a shared accommodation room. So you're staying in a bunk bed with 2 to 3 to anywhere to 16 other people, depending on the size of the room. And obviously, the smaller rooms are more comfortable. Generally, you have more space, and they're quieter. But it's a great experience to meet people, and it's an experience you should have, even if you plan on just working in Australia or traveling alone. I still think it's an experience you should undertake. Okay, that being said, if you are working and staying at a hostel, things can get a little bit complicated. Just because if you're like me and you like to put in the hours, you coming home, you will have no privacy. Chances are you'll be woken up once or twice. It's loud. People might complain about the lights or the noise or you getting up early or coming in late. It can cause a little bit of trouble. That being said, if that stuff doesn't bug you, or if you're a really heavy sleeper, great, then it's probably good for you. There are options to stay in a hostel that make it a little bit better. So, for example, I stayed in this hostel for 6 months, actually, the Fremantle Prison YHA. I helped them about 10 to 14 hours a week cleaning the kitchen, and I got a private room. Actually, one of the private cells, they call it, which is basically a small private room. But I had my privacy, good nights, and the peace and quiet that you're missing usually in a hostel. So it was nice to be able to go and hang out with people all the time when I want to, but then if I have a really hard day or a tough day at work, I'm able to come home and just pass out or be alone. So that's really beneficial, and they are everywhere in Australia. It's hard to find a city or a town that doesn't have a hostel in it. So you won't have a problem finding a place that way, and it is the most flexible, again, as said, generally one of the cheapest, and they're just everywhere, so you won't have a problem like that. Secondly is finding apartments. So an apartment or a homestay in Australia is basically the same as anywhere back home, but the good thing about Australia is generally they have shorter terms. The hostel is designed if you are staying for a shorter time, right? They're actually, most of them actually say only supposed to say 21 days or something like that, but most of it, they let you stay as long as you want. But they work best if you're shorter term, finding an apartment, or not going to be there for that long. Apartments, you will need to generally commit to a month, if not 3 months. There are several homestays where you can rent per week. You can rent a room. Generally, those are quite expensive. If you want to find an apartment usually you can find an apartment that matches the price of a hostel. That comes pretty, like a room in an apartment, that matches the price of a hostel pretty damn close. Problem is you do need to commit usually to a 3 to 6 month lease, which is not that bad if you plan to work for 6 months. A lot of people come to Australia, travel for 3 months, work for 6 months, and then travel another 3 months, or do forward and back, whatever you're doing. So that's a great option if you're going to be in a place a long time, and it gives you the privacy and the peace and quiet, the good night's sleep that you're really going to usually miss in a hostel. That being said, it's a lot less social. So it's a trade-off there. You determine what you want. I find when I'm working, I like to make my friends at a hostel, and then go get an apartment with them, or rent a room at the house and make friends with them, keep up and date with them, or make friends from where you're working, stuff like that. There's always options, and you still socialize a lot. It is just less of a social atmosphere, obviously, because it's just you and usually one or two other people. And the third option is camping. This is primarily for people that are traveling and not working. That being said, I do know several people who I've worked with that live in their van or stay at campsites because they have a very outfitted vehicle with a rooftop tent or something like that. I don't think it's the most comfortable, but generally it's the cheapest. Generally you can find campsites for whatever, $10 to $20, right, a night. And there's, of course, a lot, and when you're traveling, there's a lot of free ones. And like usually the police aren't too particular. You're a lot of areas, a lot by the beach and stuff, they don't let you park your van or your car there. But there are a lot of free campsites and cheap campsites in Australia if you are looking for that. When it comes to working, I wouldn't recommend it. I actually did when the coronavirus first hit. We lived in a tent for 3 weeks or a month, I believe. We lived in like the rooftop tent of our vehicle, and I was just doing Uber at the time. And that worked great for me, doing that kind of job and in a pinch. So there is that option if you're tight on cash or you just love being outside. Great. You're going to have trouble finding cheap and accessible campsites within a city, of course. But if you're living in a rural area and you have some kind of job like that, it is an option to explore. So to revise, there's hostels, apartments, and camping. Hostels are the best for socializing and quick stays or long stays if you don't mind a little bit of ruckiness, or if you're looking for a party atmosphere all the time, hostels are your spot. Apartments are great for your own privacy, having a spot, being able to settle down for a little bit, but you lose that social aspect. Generally, you could find ones about the same price as a hostel. And camping. That's the option I would recommend when moving. Much like Canada or the US, if you're on a road trip, camping is the way to go in Australia. It can get a little bit hot, and some areas the flies make you want to kill yourself, but it is the best option, the cheapest option, and it gets you the real Australian experience in my mind. All right, thank you so much, guys. In the next episode, number 5, I'll be talking about how to get a job in Australia, what kind of jobs are available, what's the most common, and everything you need to know about prepping yourself for that. All right, thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.